Hey guys, Nicholas here from Panorama, and I just finished building out my latest mixing template, and I'm going to take you through that design process. I'm aiming to implement a workflow which mirrors a lot of what I've learned over the past 2 years since I last did this. The plan is to replace mix buses with VCA faders, mix bus processing with parallel processing, have the ability to render deliverables for stem mastering, remixing, and also alternate mixes for TV mix and instrumental only. Now, before building this, I need to know how many audio channels, VCA faders, auxiliary channels for parallel processing and compression I'm going to need in this template. I began planning this out on a pen and paper, taking stock of my current template and writing out every channel, using an uppercase A for audio channels ahead of the name, lowercase v for VCA faders, lowercase a for auxiliary, followed by lowercase pc or pp for parallel compression or parallel processing, depending on the utility of the channel. I use brackets to identify audio channels I'd like to group, green brackets to identify folders of channels, and red to identify record-enabled channels for printing deliverables. As I said earlier, it's my aim to omit the need for food group processing with mix buses and replace that with VCA faders, and this is a technique that I've learned from one of my favourite all-time mixers, Craig Bauer, where when you're working with food group processing, any changes you make to the mix bus group changes the inherent sound of individual elements feeding that group, which means then if you go to change the group, the elements that are feeding that group, then that's going to affect the processing on that group bus, and then you end up entering tail chasing situations where any adjustment on a mix bus group affects the sound of the individual channels feeding it and vice versa. Here's a solution which I've been implementing as of recent to replace mix bus groups with VCA faders to control the grain structure, and using parallel processing or parallel compression in order to implement any of the tone or character processing I otherwise would have used on the mix bus groups has been working to great effect. And this also avoids any roundabout processing pitfalls which I used to encounter in my old template setup. To do this, it's simple. Anytime on my old template I see a mix bus group, I replace it with a VCA fader, and wherever those mix bus groups are heavily relying on character or tone processing, I add a parallel chain for that to also be implemented but blended in on top of the signal. Now, after writing this all out, it's time to take stock. I counted all the audio channels, both stereo, mono, all the VCA faders, auxiliary channels, and basically wrote that all down, then went into Pro Tools, Command-Shift-N, and replicated that count on how many audio channels, auxiliary channels, VCA faders I would need to populate them inside my DAW. From here, I drag all the channel strips as per laid out in my plan into order, rename them, group them accordingly, color coordinate them, and then get all my routing set up. For my input and output settings, I like having consistency across my sends. Sends A to E I use for all my parallel compression, parallel processing, and effects sends. All my sends in slots F to J are for my printing and deliverables. Most namely, slot G is for my instrument only print. Slot H is for my lead vocal print, slot I is for my stems for stem mastering print, and slot J are for my stems for remix print. I safe solo all my auxiliaries so I can input monitor them while I'm mixing, and also make sure all my sends are in post fader mode so any gain changes are then replicated on the sends as well. Inside my prints folder, I have the channel name set to AA_song title _ the instrument. This way, after export, I can use the rename function on Mac OS to rename the files in bulk and keep my naming convention for all deliverables in line with technical document AES TD 1002.2.15-02 recommendation for delivery of recorded music projects. Inside my print folders are 6 stems for stem mastering and another stems for remixing. These can all print simultaneously, which is great for quick and efficient deliveries. On top of this, I have 3 printers, one for my main mix bus and another 2 for TV mixes and another for instrumentals, all which are fed by sends in slot I and J in my mixing channels to deliver these mixes for my clients. From here, I've imported my session data from my old template where I keep my main chains and processes I use on individual channels. Then save this all to a template. This was my process for redesigning my mixing template, and if you're on Pro Tools 2020 or newer, you can actually get access to it. I've left a link in the description below, and for the price of $5, you can buy it, look through it, see how I've routed everything, and use it yourself. If you've learned something new in this video, feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below, and I'm happy to have you here along for the ride. Until next time, take care.